Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of our fruit tutorial. So just to start off, one thing that I did is I went through the layers and I changed the scale and rotation of the fruit that I have a little bit. And remember that you can get to rotation and scale with the hotkeys S and R, so you can toggle back and forth. So I would go in and make some adjustments so that your fruit's looking interesting to you. It was all kind of just centered and all upright in the beginning. And so I thought that having a little visual variety of where it's sitting in the composition. I left the orange and the kiwi in the center because they're really round, but I took the apple and avocado and sort of pointed them in different directions. So you can kind of see a visual pattern here over the 6 pieces of fruit. So I was kind of looking at my color scheme, and I love the bright colors, but I think I overdid it a little bit. I think that these are too bright. So I'm actually going to add some colors to my color palette here in my library for fruit to give myself a few more options. So what I'm going to look for, and you can look for whatever you want, or if you're happy with what you have, you don't need to add colors. But the other thing that I realized is I have 6 pieces of fruit and only 5 colors in a color palette. So what I'm going to search for, because I want something a little less saturated, is I'm going to use the word muted, but I'm going to use rainbow as well because I want a nice wide variety of color. And I'm going to come up here to the top and make sure that fruit is still the active library, and it is. So I'm going to go through here. Ooh, I kind of like this color scheme here. I'm going to add that to the library. And what you're going to see is that that's popping up here in After Effects. I'm going to go down and grab a few more options. I'm really liking these ones as well. I think they kind of visually fit with what I have picked out here. So I'm gonna grab this one. Okay, so now that I have some nice muted bright colors chosen, we can go ahead and start adding solid backgrounds for these different pieces of fruit. So in the panel here, we're going to do a new solid, just like we have been doing. So new solid, and I'm going to pick a color for the strawberry. And I try to, for this particular exercise, I'm trying to pick things that are complementary colors, which would be on the opposite side of the color wheel. So for the strawberry, I'm going to choose a green, and I think this lighter green is going to work really well for that. So I'm going to go ahead and create that layer. I'm going to move it underneath the strawberry, and I'm kind of liking the green against the strawberry, so that's looking great. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down to the same size on the timeline as the strawberry. And perfect. So now we're ready to move on to the orange. So now all I need to do, now that I have this sort of measured out, is I can just hit Command D for duplicate, and we're going to move this solid down underneath the orange and just drag it into place. What I can do to change the color of this layer is just go to Layer, Solid Settings, which is Shift Command Y, and we're going to pick a different color. Now, orange's complementary color is purple. So I'm going to grab my dropper and I'm going to come over to this purple, and I think that looks pretty cool. So I'm going to choose that. And then what I'm going to do is just go through and do color choices for the other 4 of these. So you're going to see me speed up the video, which I do a lot in tutorials when we get to something that's a little bit tedious and repetitive. So I'll be back with you here in just a moment. Okay, so now I have colors chosen for all of the different fruits. I'm kind of looking at the strawberry here, and I just want to bring the scale of that up a little bit more. So that looks good. So I'm going to just kind of let this play. Okay, cool. And I like all the colors too. As I'm looking down my layers panel, I can see that the colors have a good contrast and changing over time. And you don't want any of them to be too close together in terms of the color that they are. But these are all different and great. So we've got a really colorful, fun, imagery going on for whatever it is that we're making the animated GIF for. So the next thing I want to do is just I'm going to choose one more color background. And let me see, I think that these are all pretty bright. I'm going to choose one of these two blues. So I'm going to go ahead and make one more solid layer. And I'm going to drag it down to the bottom. And I want to say something about this food. Let's say I'm doing like animated GIF for like a mailer of some kind, or who knows what, like an email marketing campaign. So with it selected, I'm gonna go to my solid settings, and I think I'm gonna just see what I think about these blues. I think that this one is gonna fit with the other colors that are already selected a little bit better. And then I am going to create a text layer. And what I want my phrase to say is fresh food fast. So I'm going to go ahead and type in fresh. And I clearly need to change the color here. So I don't see any colors. I think I'm just going to use a bright white to have a great contrast there. Now I'm in my libraries panel up here, and I want to go back to where my properties panel is just going to show up. So I can click on standard up here, and then I'm going to go over to my text fill. And if I just come to go to the farthest upper left hand corner, that's going to be my white. And then I need to pick a font for this food. And I'm not sure what I'm going to choose. Sometimes the hardest thing about these tutorials is picking fonts, which I've probably said before. How about this one? We'll just go with this one. I like this one. It's nice and blocky, kind of stylish. What I'm having my reader or my viewer read is not complicated. So I can use a decorative font. If you're using a decorative font and you're using a lot of text, you're going to lose that person because they're not going to be able to process that. So anyway, okay, so here's fresh. And what I want to do is animate this in scale so that it like pops onto the screen, which is something we have done in previous tutorials. So I'm going to click on fresh, and I'm going to choose S for scale. I'm going to go ahead and toggle on the time clock at the very beginning, and we're going to hit 0 enter. So it is 0 in scale, and I really want it to like pop. So we're going to go here and hit 100 and enter, and let's see how that's looking. So that looks pretty good. Fresh. And I like the timing on that, so that's wonderful. Now what I'm going to do to make life easier for myself, first of all, we've done a lot in this project, so this is a good time to go ahead and file and save your work. You're going to find that because After Effects is so taxing on your computer's processing capabilities, depending on your setup, that saving your project's always a good idea, especially when you have the possibility of it crashing. So I'm going to go back down to fresh, and I am going to duplicate this layer twice. I'm going to pull fresh underneath and fresh 2 underneath and fresh 3 on the bottom. Then I'm going to shift select these layers. I'm going to hit my U key to reveal the keyframes so that I can kind of see what's going on. Fresh 2, I'm going to rename. I'm going to rename that to food. It's not letting me rename that for some reason. Wonder if it'll let me. Oh. That's strange. I love technical difficulties during tutorials. All right, well, I'll come over here to Fresh 2. I'm gonna grab my selection tool. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take, well, maybe it's because I have them all selected. That's probably what's going on. I think I had them all selected. Let's see if it'll let me rename it now. Yes. Okay, so if you have multiple layers selected and you want to rename one of them, it will not let you because it doesn't know how to rename them all at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and change these to what they're gonna say. So it's gonna say fresh food fast. So I'm gonna go to my second layer here, food. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that down. And we're just gonna kind of fill the composition. And in fact, fresh is a little bit high up. If we turn on our title safe, this fresh is a little bit high up. So I'm gonna bring that down. We haven't changed the text yet, so it's kind of confusing. But I'm gonna take, nope, that's the wrong layer. Probably would have been better to change the text before I started rearranging these. So let's kind of get these centered like so, kind of in the middle. So we've got fresh, fresh, fresh. I'm gonna go ahead and change the text. For food, we're gonna say food. And then for fast, we'll do the same thing. So now we've got them all coming in at the same time, but that's not exactly how I imagine it to animate. I want the viewer to read fresh food fast. I probably should have adjusted where the anchor points were on those, but that's okay. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this timeline and I'm gonna just pull it down where this keyframe, the ending keyframe from the first layer, the second layer begins at that ending keyframe, and the same this way. So now they're coming up fresh food fast in such a manner. So, you know, a lot of this tutorial is just about how to quickly duplicate things, working with multiple layers, changing the timing of the layers as they cascade down over time. So let's say we have fresh food fast come in. We want that to linger for just a moment. So let's go ahead and end. I'm going to say let's end the work area maybe in between 4 and 5 seconds. So I need this layer right here, the blue layer, to come all the way to the end. And then we're going to take this work area and we're going to bring it in. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a preview of this. Now, if your computer is lagging or you're having some issues, remember, I'm doing this in full resolution for you all because of the tutorial so you can see really well. But you can bring this down to 1/4 of the resolution and let it play back to you more realistically in real time and get a better sense of the timing. One thing that I think we need to do actually is add a drop shadow to the food, because it does contrast from the background, but I'd like to see just a little bit more contrast around the edges. So that is what we will do really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and select this strawberry. I'm going to go to effects and the drop shadow. That's, the oldest trick in the book. So we're going to take drop shadow and just apply it to the strawberry. Let's see. I'm going to bring my resolution back up here. Now it gets a little bit tricky with a drop shadow on something like this. It's kind of working, but we need to push out the distance and the softness. That needs to be a lot more softer. So we're going to spread that out. There we go. That's looking a lot better. Now it can be tricky, like I was about to say, because these were cut out of a photograph and you can see there's kind of rough edges there. So in some ways the drop shadow can emphasize those flaws a little bit more, but then you have to think about motion too. Like this is moving pretty quickly. No one's really probably going to notice that. Unless it's really, you could also just go in and mask out these little details. In a situation where you are publishing something at a high resolution, and it's going to be lingering on the screen for a long time, you might want to do that. Okay, so let's say I really like where this drop shadow is at. Well, instead of reapplying the drop shadow to each layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to drop shadow. You can either go edit, copy, or Command C. And then I'm just going to go to each layer and I'm going to paste that drop shadow. And what you're going to see is it's the exact same settings for each of the pieces of fruit. So they're going to have the same drop shadow, which is going to be really nice. And it's a lot less work. And it seems like that background just wants to end on that last frame. So I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. Okay, so this is, what we did for this particular tutorial. Again, an emphasis on using pixelated imagery and stock photos, and then using multiple layers, changing the timing of those layers and things like that. But, you could spend more time on this, giving little mini animations to certain elements. But, you're always trying to strike that balance between what is too much movement and what's enough movement to get the attention of somebody. You don't want to do too much and you don't want to do too little. So it's the Goldilocks syndrome, right? You want to be kind of right in the middle where it's just perfect between your messaging, your imagery, and your timing. And that's kind of the game of motion graphics all together. So anyways, you could animate these more. I think what I would do if we spent a little bit more time is add some kind of textured background, but not an animated texture. That might look really nice, but for the most part, more movement than this, it's too much. I think the changing imagery is really catchy, but if we did any more movement with the fruit, it's just, it's too much. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and save my project again because I'm just kind of at a point and I'm thinking about it. It's always good to do that. And we will go ahead and send this to Adobe Media Encoder and get this rendered out for submission. Now, yours clearly doesn't have to look exactly like mine, like I mentioned in all these tutorials, but I do want to see that you're exhibiting those the techniques that I cover in the tutorials so that I know that you're understanding, what different ways of dealing with layers, and that you're, progressing along in the skill set in the course over time. So we're just going to wait for this to pop up into the media encoder. Okay, there it is, and I've got this on a video codec from the last thing that I rendered, so I want to go ahead and make sure that this says animated GIF. I do not have any transparency, so I'm just going to say match source. The other option is with transparency, which we will get to. I'm going to choose where this is going to go on my computer. It's going to go right into Fruit Tutorial. I'm going to save that, and we'll go ahead and render that out. Okay, now that is finished, so let's check out the GIF and see how it's looking. We're kind of seeing it in both. Now, if you're wondering why there's a little bit of noise in the animated GIF, this is kind of the nature of them. Animated GIFs are, by their very nature, supposed to be compressed, smaller files because they need to have instant replay on, websites and things like that. So they do degrade in resolution a little bit, and they do create these visual artifacts. For what we're doing right now in this class, I wouldn't worry about it, but I want everyone to understand that if you're making animated GIFs, you're doing so because you need it to be a low file size that quickly cycles through to your viewer. Video is a little bit different, which we will get into. So this is the GIF that you're going to turn in and submit for credit for this particular tutorial. If you hit any snags along the way, I always remember to say this at the end, but make sure you reach out to me right away. Procrastinating and waiting to do these tutorials, at the end of the week is not a good idea because you could hit technical roadblocks. So if you're able to get a little bit ahead of it, that's the best thing. That way, if you hit a technical snag, you can send me an email, we can set up a meeting and get that taken care of as quickly as possible. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.